Pravit Moy Druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm a professor just trying to help you understand context in the war in Ukraine. This is my weekly recap, and I usually do it on a Saturday. I'm doing it on a Sunday. I just had other things going on that prevented me. So we're looking Saturday to Saturday, what's happened over the course of the week. And I'm looking at the headlines that I reviewed over the week, and I'll just comment on some of them. So here we are with Saturday the 13th. Today is the 21st. Germany announced biggest aid package for Ukraine yet. It was 2.7 billion euros. So Germany is stepping up. It's a little late, and they have been doing things along the way, but they're stepping up. 2 Russian jets and 2 helicopters were shot down. I talked about that extensively earlier in the week, and you can go back to that episode and see what was going on there. Zelensky meets with the Pope, and he kind of offended, according to some reports, the Pope, because he gave him an icon of Mary with baby Jesus blacked out. And I get what he was trying to do with the artist's depiction. The blacked outness was supposed to represent the babies that were killed, the innocents, whatever. But I can also understand why that would be offensive, and I don't think he meant to offend, but I think that would. I get it. I mean, I understand. As an artist, I understand what Zelensky was trying to do, and it wasn't his art; it was somebody else's art. But at the same time, it was not his brightest shining moment. There was another gift of a Madonna on a body armor or something that was given to the Pope as well. It was not his best moment, but that's what happened. Detained Ukrainian industrialist was suspected of collaboration. He was the former head of Motor Sich, and he was asked to be exchanged for prisoners in Russia, this former oligarch. And there's going to be a bunch of things about corruption this week. Switzerland amended its legislation to supply weapons to Ukraine. That was a big turn for the Swiss. The Japanese minister warned that China and Russia are increasingly collaborating, and that's something to keep your eye on. Okay, Sunday, May 14th, Eurovision was a political statement without an official political statement. So Zelensky wanted to talk at the Eurovision or, just give a video of something, and they denied him. But everything was turned blue and yellow, and so it was plenty of political statements even without Zelensky being there. According to RT, Zelensky hints at postponing elections, they said breathlessly in an article. Well, there is martial law, and that could happen. I don't know whether they'll do that or not. I tend to doubt that they'll do that, but we'll see how that all goes down. Zelensky holds talks in Paris after Germany, and he's in Paris, Germany, England, somewhere else, and then off to the G7 by the end of the week. Russian recruiters, according to one article, are being more aggressive toward Central Asian republics in Russia than they are toward Russians themselves, and that's been a continual thing. The Russians turns out, and I didn't know this, but the Russians tend to be pretty racist about non-ethnic Russians within Russia. Monday, May 15th, Russia lost those 4 aircraft we talked about. There was a recap article about it. Another Ukrainian tycoon, his name is Dmytro Firtash, was suspected of embezzlement. Now, he's a friend of the former Russian president Yanukovych, and so this is another bit of corruption. And the corruption hits just keep coming, but they're rooting it out. And they're rooting it out because they can do it, and working with their NATO allies, it's given them the impetus to be able to actually do it in a meaningful way. And they know they need to keep their allies in place. Britain sends long-range drones, and they already last week sent long-range Storm Shadow missiles, so it's only a matter of time, I think, for the Kerch Bridge. Ukraine makes gains in Bakhmut, around the edges of Bakhmut, but then later on in the week we're going to see some change with that. Top Chinese envoy is en route to Russia and Ukraine. The Chinese are kind of elevating their stature in the region and in the world by trying to maybe play peacemaker, and we'll see how that all goes. The U.S. sees greater military relationship forming between Russia and Iran. That's right. Russia's getting its missiles from somewhere, and its weapons and armaments as it's running low, and it's getting it from Iran and North Korea, maybe Syria or something along those lines. So we'll see how that all comes together as well over time. Pravda says that the Ukraine war is a war of aggression against Russia. Try that on for size. Okay, Tuesday, May 16th, RT claims that Patriot missile base was destroyed by hypersonic strike. Well, what actually happened was that they sent 6 hypersonic missiles, the Kinzhal missiles, and 9 of another kind and 3 of another kind. And it turns out the Patriot missile battery was battle tested and proved itself very strongly. It was damaged in the strike. Some reports said it was temporarily fixed with duct tape until they could put the other component in place, but it wasn't like knocked out or anything along those lines. Ukraine's Supreme Court justice was caught in a $2.7 million, I think it was. It might have been million euros, but it was something like that. $1 million graft probe. So again, another thing about corruption, but they're surfacing it. They're getting it out. They're not just covering stuff up. Ukraine joined the NATO Center for Excellence for Cyber Defense. It's not joining NATO, but it's joining a group within NATO to work on mutual goals. And I think that's a good step the right direction. Wednesday, 17 May, Ukraine had a fighter pledge from the Netherlands. Europe's going to send F-16s, and we don't know exactly how much. I read one report that said 16 of these collectively. It might be more than that, but starting to send F-16s is a very good sign. Ukrainian First Lady is asking South Korea for non-lethal military aid, and that was important because South Korea has a cultural aversion, an allergic reaction to sending weapons to a country that is already embroiled in some war. They haven't done it, but non-lethal aid is going to be useful. South Korea and Japan are very much Western in their mentalities, even if they're in the East. Ukraine grain deal is extended for 2 months, and this was huge for Erdogan. That might make his presidency, make him back in place again. And Erdogan has brokered the original grain deal. This extra 2 months started just now, and in 2 weeks, or in a week from now rather, he's going to be running his runoff election against his opponent. So that might have helped him, pushed him over the edge. Okay, Thursday, the 18 May, day 449, Russian cruise missiles kills 1 in Ukraine, and Ukraine claims to shot down 29 out of 30 of these missiles. The EU approves a plan to tally the cost of Russian aggression. This was big, to tally the cost of Russian aggression in Ukraine for future reparations. And I think that's a great move. That reparation money needs to come out of Russian oil, Russian gas, Russian whatever they're supplying, and it needs to not come from the West. The West has been supporting it. The aggressor needs to pay the bill for having done this. Same time, Henry Kissinger changed his position on Ukraine joining NATO, and he said something about this like 6 months ago, like, maybe it was longer than that. It was almost a year ago that he said, I don't think that they should be joining Ukraine. We should go back to whatever the borders were before the 2022 invasion. And now he's totally changed his name. Russia's not that strong of a conventional power. It'll be safer for NATO because actually Ukraine is a very strong military right now with all the weapons they've been getting, all the experience. And so that he changed his tune. The U.S. considers the possibility of a frozen conflict. And so that was just a matter of, as their game planning, as their scenario planning, what could happen, but it was treated in RT like the U.S. wants to freeze the conflict, and that's not what it was saying. China woos the Central Asian states in a conference. So China is becoming bigger in the region as Russia is diminishing as they proceed with the war. And I think China is going to be a big winner from this war. There was an interesting article that there was an accounting error that freed up $3 billion for Ukraine because they accounted for something wrong in the U.S. government. That's a big accounting error, but it's good because now you have another $3 billion to spend on Ukraine because they found that error. Okay, Friday the 19th, Zelensky had a busy week in Europe, and now he's going to Japan for the G7 summit, and we'll see what happens over the next few days with that. Hungary threatens to hold up Ukrainian weapons aid because they're kind of cozy with the Russians, and so they're kind of the fly in the ointment. The U.S. will back the F-16 transfer to Ukraine. It looks like F-16s are going to happen. It's just another red line that's been crossed. Don't send these drones. Don't send these tanks. Don't send these missiles. Don't send whatever. Don't send F-16s or it'll be a nuclear war. Putin's bluff keeps getting called on this, and that's really interesting to watch. Now, the funniest article of the week was yesterday, where Russia orders the arrest of the ICC prosecutor for and the charge. Okay, so the ICC ordered an arrest warrant for Putin for war crimes. So Russia turned around and has the ICC prosecutor that created that to be arrested for, quote, making false accusations of guilt. That's what he's being charged with, and it's really kind of laughable. At the same time, Russia is also sending a new round of sanctions to the U.S. It's a retaliatory measure for American sanctions, but includes now President Obama, who cannot travel to Russia, which I'm sure is breaking his heart that he's not able to do that. Okay, Saturday, May 20th, Russia looks weak after the Kinzhal failed attack. So the Kinzhal missiles, these hypersonic, were what Putin touted as, like, these are the biggest, best things, they're unstoppable. And I read article after article saying that kind of thing, and it turns out they can stop them. So, okay. Zelensky is to meet with Biden at the G7. Lavrov called the G7 summit. It was there to contain Russia, and he's using that containment language, hearkening back to the Soviet era with the containing the Soviet Union. So he knows what he's doing with that. But the big article or event today was that Prigozhin claimed that they totally took Bakhmut. Now, I just did a video about this, so I'm not going to belabor it here, but it looks like they have gotten to the very end of the city with just a little bit left, but taken what? They certainly razed it to the ground, but it'll be interesting to see what happens here if they try to control it where they have no real shelter, or just what. Okay, that's it. In a whirlwind, that's cutting through this as quickly as I can. I'm under 12 minutes. I was racing through that, trying to give you a sense of what happened over the course of the week. Thank you for caring about Ukraine. Thank you for the likes, the coffees, the support, the comments below, and I really appreciate it, folks. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will be too.